Hey, my friends, glad to see you again. Let's talk today about natal moon conjunct to Mars and what happens when we see this fiery character showing up in a birth chart. So, we have a situation where the emotions and the motivation are blended. The emotions and the ego are blended. So, you can't have one without the other. People seek out security, which is the moon, through defensiveness. And this can be alternating with aggressive displays of emotion. This might not be a video that a lot of people with this conjunction enjoy, because even the video itself could be considered offensive. The feelings are so just under the surface that they're very reactive. People with this conjunction tend to be very, very touchy and easily offended. A process of learning to stand down and not take people so personally is really necessary with this particular conjunction. This aspect is very often seen in children who come from an early people who come from an early environment that was laced with some element of unfair accusation. Mother tends to be a fiery character when we have this conjunction. She could have been pushy. In some signs, she could have had some narcissistic characteristics going on there. It depends on the entirety of the chart, but it's very common when we have this kind of conjunction, have some kind of narrative that will follow those lines. And as a result, the child who grows up with this conjunction often felt that their ego was squashed or misinterpreted, and vows as an adult to never allow this to happen again. So they end up standing up for their feelings in every case and can feel very threatened until they hit you with how things really are. This this is a way of relieving a lot of internal pressure and fear, coming out and giving our 2 cents when we have this conjunction. It can make us feel better. But remember, people that have this particular aspect are very, very easily triggered when it comes to their feelings. Feelings of being denied or not heard, or that really anything that can prick the ego or make us feel like, we've been misperceived. That can be a big one with this particular aspect. So the ego and the feelings are linked again, so they're blended into the same thing. So feelings cause a reaction, and outside offenses cause a reaction. So we're triggered both internally and externally by almost everything. So we feel that we have to respond to almost everything in, a fighting or a defensive posture with this particular aspect. And that word, posturing, is a big thing with this energy. To behave in a way that's meant to impress or lead or sometimes mislead others, in this case by besting them or frightening them into a secondary position. So kind of like, when you see birds or animals in the animal kingdom, posturing for a mate. They're putting on a show of strength. So, the mate will respond to them and say, "Oh, I see that you're wonderful. You're all that. I'm going to allow you to pass your genetic material on to me." That's kind of the same response that people with this conjunction have, but it doesn't have to be in a mating situation. It's all situations. A big issue with this conjunction is the level of aggressive emotional response does not match the perceived offense. They can hit back 10 times harder and feel good about it. but are often very shocked at how other people are seemingly so overreactive to them. They don't understand that when someone throws a grenade at them, they retaliate with a nuclear weapon and then are dismayed at how the other party is reacting to having been nuked. You know, they are so sensitive. I can't believe what a big deal they're making out of being destroyed. This is ridiculous that they would feel this way. These kinds of responses after someone with this particular aspect has taken action against someone, it's very, very common to hear that kind of language, especially in the workplace. This really, really rears its head. This kind of behavior rears its head often in the workplace and causes a lot of issues when it comes to being able to get along with coworkers. We can see them as, kind of stupid, reactive, not understanding that we just said this and it just meant this and they're taking it this wrong way, and why would they do that? They're such a moron. And these kinds of feelings that can come as a result of your reactions with this particular conjunction. So it's like, all I did was respond to what they did to me, and now look what I have to deal with. So the fallout is huge with the responses with this particular conjunction. It's that level of response that causes 10 times the original problem. There's not an objective emotionality, if that's a phrase, that exists with this conjunction. You have to understand that the needs for security are so tied to fighting for their feelings to be what they determine they should get to be, that they actually end up a slave to the world. People with this aspect, they end up a slave to the people that they think they are making sure know what's really the case. And see, that's a tricky thing with this particular conjunction, is the internal motivation is to never be gotten, to never surrender, to remain able to exhibit any type of response you feel you may need in any situation to defend yourself. So being so focused on defense, we don't realize the level of offense is what is causing your added need for defense. The circle kind of goes like this. So we feel that we've been offended or affronted or aggrieved or hurt, misunderstood, stung, insulted, even vexed. I got to use the word vexed. I'm not even English. I don't even have a monocle. I have no crumpets. I got to use the word vexed. The point is, you have been somehow crossed, another English word, and are a slave now to the need to react. And that reaction is, again, way too harsh for the situation. So consciously you're thinking that you're coming out on top because you're so quick to respond and do so severely. But it's actually the way your ego has blended with your feelings that makes it largely more unconscious, the ego and the ego behaviors, for you than most other people. People with this particular aspect don't realize that they don't have to respond to everything and on volume level 10 in order to stay safe or in order to stay alive. They're actually putting their own safety in jeopardy by this defensive technique. that they have developed, and it is a defensive technique. It's a coping mechanism that they developed as children. And as long as, they could be forward with things and forceful with things, then they could stay safe in their environment. So a lot of the ways in which we behave and people respond to us are extremely unconscious with this conjunction. We're not sitting around with a playbook. Okay, I think I'll piss this coworker off today by overreacting to something I thought they did to me. Nobody's doing this in the light of day. Mars is largely a conscious force, but the moon is not. The moon is our ingrained, habitual, emotional patterns. It is the behaviors we adopt when we want to achieve equilibrium or safety. It's how we find security. People with this conjunction find security through intimidation. They find it safe to control their environments and people within their environments with the way they throw their anger around. The sign this conjunction occurs in is going to matter as well. If it's in Cancer or Taurus, one of the more subtle expressions of the moon, and where Mars is not terribly fiery or forward, then this aspect can be much easier to deal with and much easier to have in intimate relationships. If we have a fire sign moon and Mars, then we can really have a forceful nature on our hands, and even much more selfish motivation for getting our needs met, our feelings met, because the moon is our needs, and it's how we get those needs met. We get those needs met through kind of a selfish approach when we have this particular aspect. So people with this aspect, they are extra protective, but also very, very jealous. And this jealousy is a result of that need to be number one and an essential insecurity that exists within the moon and the ego at the same time. Bullying tactics are something that are very commonly used when we have this particular conjunction, and it's very unconscious once again. The need to remain important and in control, so people don't have the opportunity to say no or to reject you. They feel safe with a captive audience. Remember that Twilight Zone episode about the little boy who could make anything come true just by wishing for it? Do you remember that one? I saw that, I think, last year. He kept his entire family bound in terror out of what he might do if they disagreed with him. They ate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for dinner and smiled about it. They watched cartoons in the evening and acted like they loved it. If they said no, then the little boy would wish something horrible upon them and then not have any remorse for how they had been, I think, turned into a jack-in-the-box out in the cornfield. So, I saw that one when I was a little kid. I never forgot it because it was actually really quite terrifying at the time that someone could have that kind of power over someone else or over their entire family. And so everyone around this boy was playing nice. But if they had the chance, they would have probably gotten away from him as fast and as far as they could. And with this particular aspect, abandonment and eventual ostracization are a side effect of how people behave. Other people will avoid you if you are too pushy or too forward, or if you respond to them too aggressively. People will distance themselves from you. People don't have to be around you. And it's the shortness in which people that have this particular aspect treat each other, with which people treat other people, the shortness with which they treat other people, that is repellent. So developing the ability to see other people's experience and to feel what they may be feeling is key to making this aspect work for you in a way where you aren't stepping on your own toes, or you're actually getting what it is that you want. Because oftentimes we don't get what we want. We're so intent on it with this particular conjunction, but it's just out of our reach. And that's because we keep pushing it. We push the envelope so much. So being so focused on detecting and annihilating threats to how others perceive you, it makes us not able to see what other people might be feeling, because our attention is on us with this particular aspect. So your response to others is often callous or selfish. I just watched an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm where Larry David is always causing problems for himself, if you notice. So in this particular episode, he heard his friend's parakeet died. And, to him, he was like, parakeet? What's a parakeet? So he sent a text that said, hey, I heard your parakeet died. Well, it's all good because I'm still alive. Right, and then he runs into his friend, and Larry David could not wrap his mind around why his friend was so upset about this text that he had sent him about his dead parakeet. He saw, it's just a freaking parakeet. He has his moon in conjunct to Mars. It's that type of response pattern, you see, that gets us into trouble with other people, because we come across as insensitive. We tend to make things about ourselves with this particular conjunction. So, a process of becoming more aware, more conscious, less reactive, less defensive, less jealous, less self-absorbed. That's very much a part of creating a more loving, close relationship with the people in your lives. Drawing coworkers to you in a way where they want to be around you. Changing or addressing that ingrained pattern of very quick, not well thought out responses that end up actually causing you more trouble than you already had. That's really necessary. Becoming more objective and looking for objective evidence when it comes to making your decisions. Not the evidence that's coming just from your feelings alone, but actual physical evidence, other people's opinions, things that, are a little bit outside of you, and then making a decision based on that. Don't decide things or react to things in the heat of the moment. It's almost always going to be the wrong decision. And then it can create long-term consequences for you. The knee-jerk reactions that we automatically display with this particular conjunction are driven by the ego's need to be right and to be ultimately respected. And respect really does not come from forcing people into corners or going to war with them or forcing them to take your brand of medicine. That really creates the opposite of what you're actually intentionally going for. Behaving forcefully or responding forcefully will actually ensure that the other person will distance themselves or avoid you. And you are desperate for connection. You have in you such a passion and such a hot love to share. You could be the spice of someone's life. You could be the cayenne to someone's chili. What you don't want to be is so spicy that you burn their mouths up when they eat your chili and then they don't come back for seconds because they've been warned. And that's another thing, is breaking up with someone who has this particular aspect, or oftentimes with most aspects, difficult aspects, maybe any aspect from Moon to Mars, breaking up with someone who has Moon-Mars stuff is going to be very difficult and very dramatic. Deep resentment and mean feelings can arise in people who are rejected, who have this particular aspect. And again, it's the rejection that the ego feels, mixing with the feelings. Many a Moon-Mars person has taken a baseball bat to the car of the person who has dumped them. The ego just goes nuts in these cases. Breakups are hard. Breakups are some of the hardest things to contend with because of how they tear at our ego, our confidence, our sense of attractiveness, our sense of self, our worth, our basic validity. It calls all these things into question. Cheating does the same thing. Breakups are the most triggering thing for someone who has Moon-Mars or a Moon-Pluto aspect. It's breakups and rejection that, more than anything else, they are trying to avoid. They also don't like to be ignored. And they're trying to avoid this by being reactive. So when these things happen that, they're motivated against allowing to happen, all hell can break loose. It can really be an upsetting time for people when they are rejected or when they find themselves broken up with. It implies that they've lost control of the situation, and the amount of insecurity that arises is enormous. So obsessive feelings are also a part of having this particular conjunction, Moon-Pluto as well. When someone with this aspect finds themselves attracted to someone or something, it can become a mania. They can become very fixated and feel that until they are able to display their feelings or get them out there, push them onto the other person sometimes, they're never going to be able to rest. And the more that they can, again, learn to see the other side of what that person might be feeling or going through, the less they can be focused on this, the other person needing to satisfy their feelings or them needing to be the recipient of their feelings. So learning to compromise, see the other side of anyone's experience, will bring you the relationships that you are missing if you are someone who has this aspect. You must become more about others' feelings and less focused on making sure your own are taken care of by you and the other person. Your feelings need to grow up. There is a strong immaturity to how we react to people and how we handle situations when we feel threatened with this particular conjunction. It's very tiring for other people to deal with. If you can become less self-centered, then you will end up being the total package. You actually have a lot of inner strength that is something that is, before we've dealt with this aspect, something where that strength is almost on reactive automatic pilot, when it could be on proactive pilot. So that inner strength can become something you are controlling rather than outside forces controlling. It can be made real for you if you can focus less on defense and more on aggressively figuring out what others need to feel safe, what your partner may be feeling, the actual personal experience of, say, your child. You have passion, protectiveness, a sex drive that could burn a house down. I mean, that song, A Hunka Hunka Burnin' Love from Elvis, I'm a hunka hunka burnin' love, burning a hole right through the sheets. It's super creepy, but it's you all over the place. You have a lot to offer. Develop your softness. Learn to let things go. You do not have to defend yourself in every situation. This actually makes you appear weak. Learn to see the other side of things. You will end up developing these close, fiery connections that you are so desperately wanting. Develop your emotional patience. This is what will cause you to feel ultimate security. So, I hope this was helpful. And if it was, please subscribe to my channel. And you can find me on the internet at truthandaspectastrology.com, Facebook, Instagram, Patreon at Truth and Aspect Astrology. And yes, I am a consulting astrologer. I mainly am a relationship and intimacy astrologer, but I interpret all types of charts. And I hope this wasn't too difficult to hear and wasn't too offensive. And I will be back super soon with more super cool videos.